Good evening, my fellow Americans.
Take the red pill.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
The disastrous rise of misplaced power exists.
All we have built, all we have worked for, would be destroyed.
There is nothing the political establishment will not do.
And this nation will not be fully free until all its citizens are free.
Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action,
These criminals cannot be rewarded.
so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction.
There is a point beyond which they must not advance.
They're coming after you, and I'm just standing in their way. Here I am.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny.
The cost of freedom is always high.
Those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
This is a crusade! This is a holy war against the deep state!
We never wanted to be right, but yet things are all adding up to the firestorm.
From time to time, we've been tempted to believe that society has become too complex to be managed by self-rule, that government by an elite group is superior to government for, by, and of the people. We are a nation that has a government, not the other way around. And this makes us special among the nations of the earth. Our government has no power except that granted it by the people. It is made up of men and women who raise our food, patrol our streets, man our mines and factories, teach our children, keep our homes, and heal us when we're sick. Professionals, industrialists, shopkeepers, clerks, cabbies, and truck drivers. They are, in short, we the people. Their patriotism is quiet but deep. Their values sustain our national life. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. We will maintain sufficient strength to prevail if need be, knowing that if we do so, we have the best chance of never having to use that strength. Above all, we must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Well, I believe we, the Americans of today, are ready to act worthy of ourselves, ready to do what must be done to ensure happiness and liberty for ourselves, our children, and our children's children. We are a nation under God, and I believe God intended for us to be free.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Josh. Welcome to the Red Pill Project's Daily Dose. We are live with you Monday through Thursday, usually at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Today, just an hour later, I was at the Naturally Inspired Health Summit this last weekend. A great time. Drove back over the weekend. It was hectic, and then we got like 4 inches of rain here yesterday and had some flooding, so I had to take care of that, and I was sleeping all day, so I apologize for the tardiness, but I hope everybody is doing fantastic and well and all that good stuff. So I just want to make sure, because I had to hook my computer back up. All right. We looking good. We sounding good. Can everybody give me like that 5-5? Going back to that 5-5 thing, it's been a while since we looked at those types of things. You know what types of things I'm talking about. I'm on a certain channel. Oh, by the way, I wanted to let everybody know. So for those out there, I got my start on YouTube. Isn't that crazy? We had a lot of subscribers on YouTube before some things happened. So I wanted to put this out there in case you are a YouTuber and you're looking for another place to watch us at. But we do have a new YouTube channel. and you can find it really easily. It's just redpills.tv/YT. redpills.tv/YT. And you can find the live stream right there. We're streaming live on there right now. I think I can probably just refresh and bring that up. You'll see us streaming live. Yep, there we are. So we're live streaming right there right now, and we're going to try to put every episode up there, and we're following some rules. We're just not saying some certain words, but that's okay. I think we can do pretty good. So that's redpills.tv/YT, like as in YouTube, YT. But I wanted to talk about this real quick because I thought this weekend, and I posted it on my Twitter, and nobody got it. You ready for this? So Dan Scavino, the Dan Scavino, posted this meme on Twitter. Just, let's flick the nuts of a tiger. Now, the curious part is it's a meme, and he posted it at 9:36 p.m. 9:36. Now, military time, that's 21:36. 21:36 is quite interesting. Did you know that there's a message at 21:36 on our Intel drops? If we look at our Intel drops, look at that. Knowledge is power. How do you know when something very big is about to drop? Attacks increase from all directions. Ready the memes. Pfizer corruption. You have more than you know. Keep up the good fight. We stand together. Oh. Do you think that's a coincidence that 21:36 and the time that he posted that all correlate together? Kind of interesting there, isn't it? Now, it's interesting too, because that's what I was saying last week. We go back to last week, we go back a year, we go back 2 years, 3 years, the Firestorm event and everything that we've said and how all this unravels, that you're about to see some drops. You're about to see shit start hitting the proverbial fan. You're about to see the release of the quite literal Kraken. What do I mean by that? Donald Trump has what's known as the Crossfire Hurricane Binder. This includes information about various different operations from the Obama administration pertaining to Pfizer warrants, classified Pfizer warrants that were utilized to spy on Donald Trump and Donald Trump's campaign. In October 17th, 2017, when Donald Trump was doing a press conference with some various generals and admirals of the United States military, he goes like this. He says, "Do you all know what that means? It's the calm before the storm." And one of the reporters asked, "What storm, Mr. President?" "You'll find out." Well, Crossfire hurricane's a storm. And then what else do we have? We have all of the subsets of those as storms. So one of the things that was being looked at from Mar-a-Lago just happened to be, well, the Crossfire Hurricane Binder. If you know the story behind the Crossfire Hurricane Binder, September 12th, 2020, Donald Trump made a tweet on then Twitter, now X, stating, "I hereby classify all documents pertaining to the Hillary Clinton email investigation as well as the Crossfire Hurricane investigation." Again, on December 20th, 2020, Donald Trump stated the same tweet, "I hereby declassify all documents pertaining to the Hillary Clinton email scandal as well as the Crossfire Hurricane investigation." The documents that he was talking about were sent to the Department of Justice for redactions. They were turned back from the DOJ to the White House at approximately January 18th and 19th, 2020, right before the quote unquote transition of power. When that happened, the FBI had made the redactions and Donald Trump had set it for public release. A few days later, the Biden administration comes in and immediately reclassifies it under concerns of national security. Well, Donald Trump had already taken it with him, had already declassified it. So they reclassified something that Donald Trump had declassified. Now they had certain legal authority, in a sense, to go after Donald Trump. And this is what caused the Mar-a-Lago raid. There's a few other things in that Mar-a-Lago raid, though, that are very, very important that they were going after. We're not going to talk about that so much right now. But we have to understand is that all of this persecution that is coming about for Donald Trump is being directed at him for character assassination, political assassination. They're not trying to take him down by actually taking him out and martyring him. What they're trying to do is bankrupt him and completely destroy his public image. But that is completely absolutely, completely just reversing everything that they're trying to do. Instead of trying to destroy Donald Trump, they are making him that martyr. Instead of trying to bankrupt Donald Trump, he just made $3.1 billion off of Truth Social. Instead of trying to kill his character, they're making him more popular than ever. His campaign has raised over $217 million in just the last 30 days, over 68 million of that coming on the day of his conviction. Donald Trump, just today. Now, this is going to be interesting because this is going to sound very familiar for you. I want you to go back about 6 to 8 months. And we did an episode here in the Daily Dose where we talked about Donald Trump and the relationship between former heads of states and the Supreme Court, to where the Supreme Court has what's known as original jurisdiction. Original jurisdiction means that they are the only real court of the land, and they can try any case that they want. And typically, anything involving a head of state, foreign head of state, will go to the Supreme Court. And I said, Donald Trump is going to appeal these actions to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the one, once he's convicted, will take up these cases and will find him not guilty. Donald Trump today on Truth Social, the sentencings for not having done anything wrong will be conveniently for the fascists 4 days before the Republican National Convention. The radical left Soros-backed DA who ran on a platform of "I will get Trump" reported to an acting local judge appointed by Democrats who is highly conflicted will make a decision which will determine the future of our nation, ? The United States Supreme Court must decide. And he's petitioned the United States Supreme Court to take this case. We told you. We told you because that's how this operates. It is you allow them to create this facade. Never interrupt your enemy when they're in the process of destroying themselves. So what do we have here? We have the appeals of any convictions for Donald Trump that are immediately going to go to the Supreme Court, which we have a 5-4 favor of the Supreme Court of conservative judges. Okay. And by the way, that legal battlefield that he would have to go through right there, the Supreme Court, this is a no-brainer for them. This was a massive political persecution, and the exculpatory evidence wasn't even allowed to be put into the trial. So that's kind of telling right there. Now, going back is over the series of the next, I would say 6 to 12 to 18 months, we are about to see the storm. And the storm is not just going to be one-sided. It is going to be two-sided. There's going to be a lot of things happening, but I'm telling you, you're going to have journalists, well-known journalists, Michael Schellenberger, Tucker Carlson, these types of people, Laura Logan, probably, I don't know, but you're going to have well-known journalists publishing to their massive audiences information pertaining to the Crossfire Hurricane, Russia, the persecution of Donald Trump from 2016 to present day. And they're going to say that their sources were 100% anonymous. And we know where that was coming from. Why? Because this was a drip flood that I've been talking about. This is the part of the firestorm and why the firestorm has been set up to this point. All this stuff that we've talked about, the social, cultural destabilization, political destabilization, the infiltration of our institutions, academia, the setting up of our supply chain, and the destruction of our infrastructure, all of that part has been set up, just chipped away a little bit at a time for this moment now, for the moments that are coming right now. Why? Because you have to have the ability to expend ammunition. When something is foundationally strong, you have to chip away at it and decay it to a certain degree to where little push will collapse it into destruction. And that's where we're at right now, is that our whole system has been completely degraded over the last 4 years, bankrupt over the last 4 years. And then we've had a lot of illegal immigration come into our country. We know within that illegal immigration, there's a large percentage of those that are terrorists that could potentially rise up during that social, cultural, revolutionary aspect and create mayhem and chaos. For that, what I tell you to do is arm yourself to the fucking teeth. Arm yourself to the fucking teeth. Know how to shoot straight. There's nothing bad about saying that. That's just American, right? We're American. You're American. Arm yourself to the teeth. That's how we do it. Okay, so We know that they had to systematically start tearing down the infrastructure of the United States of America. That's the social culture of the community. They've been doing this for 30 to 50 years. But if we look at what's happening right now, they had to really kick and ramp this up because they have to be able to expend ammunition over the next 6, 12, and 18 months. Now, there's not a doubt in my mind if there is an election in November, on November 5th, that Donald Trump will overwhelmingly win, that the Republicans will overwhelmingly win both houses. So we come to the scenario where they can't let that happen. They cannot allow the election to happen or for Donald Trump to take power. And I've said this before, that they will destroy this planet. They will scorch the earth before they ever give up power. So Donald Trump has been taunting these SOBs for a very long time. Just today, or just yesterday, he said, Donald Trump said he will declassify bombshell 9/11, September 11th documents, Jeffrey Epstein documents, and the JFK files. And I bet you also in there is UFO information. And I guarantee you that is in there in some way, shape, or form. So not only that, is we have an event that's coming up here very, very shortly. I thought I had this in my my primary, but I don't. But we have the Bilderberg group coming up this month, and they're going to be meeting over in Europe. Now, isn't that interesting? Every year these guys meet, and I bet they're going to be talking about global domination, and they're going to be talking about, oh shit, we're in a pickle. What do we need to do? And they're going to say, well, we need some crises. We need some crises to begin to occur because the political persecution of who they're going after just isn't working. Donald Trump has become immutable in that sense, but they can still come after you and me, and they will try exactly what they're doing right now with Alex Jones. I'm not going to get too much into the Alex Jones stuff, but just know a federal prosecutor is trying to liquidate Alex Jones, his assets, including go out there, take out InfoWars, shut down the show, and fire all the employees. A federal judge stepped in yesterday, a Texas judge stepped in yesterday and shut that junction down. It's laid off until January 14th. Here's the thing. I don't care what you think about Alex Jones or not. If you love him, if you like him, if you hate him, if you think he's a patriot, if you think he's Mossad, the guy has been right, very, very right over the last 30 years. And he puts out some really good information, and he has a very, very big voice. With that being said, is the attacks on Donald Trump or the attacks on Alex Jones are meant to take down Alex Jones because he is over the target and on the money. We can agree to disagree on that. That's my belief. That's my perspective. Like I said, if you're new here to the Red Pill Project, okay, we have a little motto. Never believe anything anybody tells you, no matter who they are, what authority they possess or profess, unless you can prove it with your own research, investigation, inquiry, and through your own volition. Now, that last part right there, what does that mean? It doesn't mean go out and just, oh, well, Josh was talking about this news article. Well, that news article is real, and the information he said is real. That's not investigation. Investigation is going back as far as you possibly can with the information, finding out the backgrounds of the various people involved, looking at the predicate that brings about what you're actually talking about. And that's one thing that we tend to do here. And that's one thing that Alex Jones does is he's got the receipts. And this is the thing that you have to do is you have to have the receipts when you go out there and do research. Doing research is not an easy thing. We've been doing this for 4 or 5 years now. We've been doing this for about 4 or 5 years now with the Daily Dose. We were somewhere else. We got deleted and we had to start all over. But we've been doing the Daily Dose for about 5 years now. The one thing that you have to understand about all of this is that this information that we're putting out there, if it's bullshit, within a few months, you're going to know it's bullshit. If it's legitimate, in a few months, you're going to see the legitimacy of the information. Now, I don't tell you who to watch. I don't tell you who to follow. I don't care who you watch or who you follow. But whatever you do, make sure that you're paying attention to that specifically, the legitimacy. Go back into the past and look at the information that people have talked about and see what has actually occurred. And not what they're telling you is occurring. Not what not what Michael Baxter over at Real Raw News is reporting. That's actually disinformation. But legitimate things that you can prove and validate 100%. When you start looking at things like that, your whole world changes. You begin to see through the lies, the misconceptions, the disinformation, the misinformation, and the psyop. And I think it's really important to talk about that from time to time, because I see a lot of people out there still following bullshit. And we have a very high level of accuracy in the things that we've talked about on this show. We might not have been spot on in the time frames, but if you look right now, we are absolutely 100% in the firestorm. And I've been talking about that since November 2020. And this shit is coming. This shit is coming full force right now. It's like, buckle up, Dorothy. Kansas is going bye-bye. Okay. So Jim Jordan has called Alvin Bragg, the DA in New York City, to appear for a congressional hearing on June 13th to testify about the political prosecution of former President Trump. Now, do you notice that they're going after the prosecutors? You're going after the DAs. They're going after the judges now. And this is Congress. Now, look, I think that we have the left and the right wing of the same bird in Congress, but Donald Trump does have a certain power and authority over Congress. And we're seeing him flex his muscles with this and go back and start going after these people. And look at the funding. Follow the money. This is what they did with Fannie Willis in Georgia. And what do you find? You find the money's tied directly to the White House, the chief counsel, the same thing that's happening in the Jack Smith case, that the White House is directly involved in this, the Biden administration, which brings about aspects of election interference. So pay attention to what's happening there. I think Jim Jordan's a good guy, but I think that Congress itself is inept. Just my thoughts. California sheriff changing teams, going all in for Team Trump. Sheriff Chad Bianco has spent his lifetime working in law enforcement and likely never expected that he'd be rallying behind a felon in a presidential election. During a 30-year career with the sheriff's office in Riverside County, California, elected to the top spot in 2018, Bianco had many different encounters with criminals and built a national reputation of law and order conservative. However, a felon that Bianco intends to support isn't the kind of common criminal selling drugs and committing violent offenses that Bianco sees so often in the crime-loving state of California. The convict who the sheriff is changing teams is much more monumental figure, President Donald Trump. And so the good sheriff, we can listen to kind of what he's going to say right here. I think I can... Let's bring this up. Hopefully they don't try to make me sign in for this crap. Yep, they're going to. I don't like Instagram. I think Instagram's crap. Hold on one second. It's not letting me do it. Okay. It's not letting me play it because... Oh, wait, maybe that was it. Hold on. I think I might have it. There we go.
By arresting criminals and putting them in jail and putting them in prison, keeping them out of our neighborhoods. For the last 5 years, I've been very critical about our governor for slashing our budgets from corrections, for letting prisoners out early, for closing our prisons. I've been critical of our state legislature for passing laws to make it harder to put people in prison. I've been critical for their changing laws that let prisoners out early. And I've been critical for our Attorney General for seemingly not caring about crime and really being an embarrassment to law enforcement. And this love affair that our governor and our state legislature have with criminals is based on the belief that criminals are not responsible for their own actions. They're a victim of society. And really, it's our fault. It's society's fault. It's business's fault. It's cops' fault. It might be my fault. Law enforcement, apparently, if you listen to our governor, is systemically racist. If you listen to our legislature, our laws are systemically racist. Our judicial system is systemically racist. All of these people that are being put in jail are because of law enforcement bias and DA bias and all of these things. And so they let them out. They give them food. They give them housing. They give them money. They give them drugs and alcohol now. And I got to be honest, I'm getting tired. And I'm wondering if I'm having a change of heart and deciding that, you know what, maybe I've been wrong. And I think I'm going to change teams. I know it's going to make some of you angry. I know that you're going to be mad at me, but I'm going to change teams. I think they're onto something, but I don't think they're doing enough. I think that we need to go big. You know me, go big or go home. You're the biggest, you do the best, you're the best at everything, and you might as well do something right if you're going to do it. And I'm all in. And I hope that you're all with me. I hope that you all have this change of heart. You all feel that this is definitely the right thing to do, and you come alongside me in this venture. And I think it's time that instead of letting them out of jail and giving them alcohol and drugs and everything else, I think it's time we put a felon in the White House.
Trump 2044, baby. So very interesting there, because it was just 2 weeks ago that Ivan Racklin talked and discussed about how you have to have a unification behind the county sheriffs and utilizing that brand of law enforcement, the only elected law enforcement officials within each county in each state. You begin to have this massive force that can impose the actual Constitution upon the laws that are being played. Trump 24, absolutely awesome. This is fantastic. I love it. I hope more and more sheriffs begin to come forth. So the video, we just talked about it a second ago. It's only 13 seconds. I'm going to play the clip for you about Trump talking to a few different people discussing the documents that he's going to release. Listen to this.
Would you declassify the 9/11 files?
Yeah.
Would you declassify JFK files?
Yeah.
Would you,
I did a lot of it.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
Attorney. Whoa. No holds barred. You got to imagine how bad that is going to be for the deep state, for the various aspects of the cabal when those documents are released. That is going to bring down the house quite literally, especially the JFK documents, because everybody really wants to know, why did the CIA do it? Why did the Central Intelligence Agency at that time do it? Well, because JFK wanted to shatter the CIA. He wanted to destroy the CIA. Alan Dulles and his whole network had infiltrated the United States of America and really hijacked it through the intelligence community and defense contractors. And that happened after World War I and World War II and the changing transition of the New World Order. Talking about the New World Order, tonight's show is called The Destruction of the New World Order. And the reason it's the destruction of the New World Order is because in order for something brand new to be built up, you have to destroy what's old. And what we're seeing right now is the systematic destruction of the old guard. I was talking to a few different people this weekend, and people's names that you would know, and they're really good people. Actually, one of them was Dr. Lee Merritt. So give you an idea, Dr. Lee Merritt. By the way, I wanted to throw this out there for everybody. This Friday, I believe at noon, Dr. Lee Merritt's Medical Rebel show will be on Red Pill Project Decentralized Media. So you can find that on all of our channels. It will not be on the YouTube channel. So sorry, it will not be on the YouTube channel. Most of the stuff other than this show and The Fringe, we don't put on the YouTube channel, but it will be on all of our other channels. So make sure you are subscribed to multiple channels, because different shows do go on different channels. But Dr. Lee Merritt will be joining us over here at Decentralized Media. That is our kind of like our big umbrella for everything that we do. Red Pill Project is underneath that, as well as Naturally Inspired Podcasts, Unrestricted Warfare, Beyond the Bible, and kind of quite a few more shows coming up here in the near future. We're just trying to get everything logistically worked out. But Dr. Lee Merritt will be every Friday at noon here on these channels. So make sure you're subscribed to that. It's going to be really big. But we were talking about a few different things. And, you know, I said that we're talking about the systematic destruction of the old guard. We're talking about the ancient bloodlines that are being decimated. They're being replaced by new figures. And that's what happens when you have this transition of a new age. And what I call it a multi-headed hydra, right? That's what this global power structure is. You know, we like to think of it as a web of influence, but really what it is a multi-headed hydra. And each head has its various different ideology that they conform to. And then they work to infiltrate the undercarriage of that hydra, the body of that hydra, because that body is what controls the functionality and gives it its real power. And that's really the people of the world. It's the influencing and the information and all these types of things. And they do that through the radicalization and the propagation of their ideologies. Well, for the longest time, we've had only just a few different heads of the Hydra that have been battling for the various powers on this planet. But now, with modern technology and everything that has risen up, we've seen multiple other heads of that Hydra rise up and begin pressing for control over everything that's happening. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think that it's pretty much a good thing. It's similar to what happened in 1776 when the United States of America was actually founded and began the revolution against Great Britain. If you didn't know, that wasn't an organic revolution. That wasn't something that just spawned and they're like, we just want to be rid of Great Britain because of 2% tea tax. That's not why it happened. There was a lot of things that brought about the American Revolution. But one of the primary things that brought about the revolution was one of the heads of the Hydra not liking the rest of the Hydra. One of the heads of the Hydra that had their own influences, their own ideologies, was a vast global network of trade. Didn't like the fact that they had to pay tax on everything that they were shipping around the world to a small little country, even though the ships weren't originating from that country and weren't going to that country. And so they began to fight back. And one of the ways they fought back was by infiltrating the 13 colonies in Turtle Island, the North America, in the 13 colonies there, and then funding the revolutionaries. And interesting enough is, Alexander Hamilton, if you didn't know this, Alexander Hamilton, one of the founding fathers of our country, was only 19 years of age during the American Revolution. Imagine like a 19-year-old standing next to Donald Trump right now and leading the revolt. It just doesn't make much sense. Well, the reason it doesn't make much sense is because Alexander Hamilton was there for a specific reason. He was a proxy for somebody else. He was a proxy for Lord Hamilton in Scotland. And Lord Hamilton just happened to be one of the board of directors of a company known as the East India Company. The East India Company's flag had 13 alternating red and white stripes on it, and the Union Jack on the left-hand corner, which just happened to be the first flag of the United States, the Grand Glory, at its founding right after the Declaration of Independence. Can't make this shit up. But understanding that Hydra rose up and it allowed the propagation of freedom. It allowed people to establish a whole century or two of new ideas of freedom. It created what we know of the United States of America maybe 50 years ago when it was still free. And so I don't look necessarily as every head of the Hydra as something that's bad, as something that's negative, as something that is going to destroy us. But I look at them as competing factions with various different ideologies. Some of those ideologies are horrific. They're abusers. They're satanic. They're evil. They feed and prey off of children. They run global crime syndicates. They run the global human trafficking industry. They run the global drug and arms trafficking industries. And they correlate and launder all that money through various NGOs, nonprofits, and charities. And they're usually tied to religious bloodline families or very, very powerful figures in the world. On the other hand, you have these other people, which a lot of them are unnamed. We know that Donald Trump is among them. And see the various different ideologies, and we kind of look at this and we can begin to see what that is. The ones that are evil, the ones that have been working a very, very long time, the Skull and Bones, the Trilateral Commission, right? These guys, the Club of Rome, the ancient bloodlines, these ones, what they want is they want a new world order. They want a one world government. They want a commune-fascist, technocratic, oligarchical controlled world that operates under a governed body that is not elected but selected. Very similar to the system that we've been running under for the last 20 years. But see, the problem with that is that in order to build that new world order, what I call the Western New World Order, you have to have all the countries playing ball. And so for the last 50 years, the United States, as the strong arm, the police force around the world, utilized financial sanctions, economic sanctions against small third world countries, large second world and first world countries when they weren't getting their way within the United Nations, within negotiations, or they used warfare to basically crumble and destroy any infrastructure. They toppled governments. They removed leaders through coups. They bankrupt people. They set people up. They honeypotted them. They blackmailed them. They coerced them. And see, that gave a lot of countries a bad taste in their mouth. And they played ball until the point where this whole system became weak. And that system became weak Because of Donald Trump's win in 2016. Donald Trump's win in 2016, which if you go to my Rumble page, and on my Rumble page, you'll see a video that's pinned to the top, and it's Q the Storm, QUE the Storm. And what it talks about is how Donald Trump won, why Donald Trump won, and all the things that happened and what happened afterwards. It's a really good video, and it kind of explains a lot of all this other stuff. And an hour if I was going to talk about that. But think about this: Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, right? Modi. They would have to give up their nation's sovereignty as well as their power to a one world government. They would have no power. Their people would be enslaved by a Western society. They don't want that. And so part of the plan was to build up BRICS as not only an economic powerhouse to get around economic sanctions from the West, but also a military powerhouse, as well as during the time of the military buildup for that powerhouse to produce a war of attrition through proxy fighting to deplete the Western resources. That's exactly what we've seen over the last 3 to 4 years. And it's exactly what I said would happen 4 years ago. Pretty crazy. Mexico, though, elects Claudia Sheinbaum as its first female president. Now, the name might sound a little odd to you, and she might look a little not Mexican to you. And that's because she's not, fully Mexican. She's a Jew. She's Jewish. Sheinbaum, Jewish. Not only Jewish, she's a proponent of the World Economic Forum. She's a proponent of global climate change's agenda, the Agenda 2030, and all of the stuff in between. And she just won the election in Mexico. Why? Well, because that election is rigged, like the Brazilian election was rigged and many other elections were rigged. But see, this is the battle that is waging. These are the battlefields. It's the political opponents that rise up. This is why in Mexico you see many of the mayors getting gunned down by mayoral candidates being gunned down by various different cartel components, right? They don't want people in there that are actually for freedom or they're going to help the people. They want people in there that are controlled opposition to where they can actually go in there and still run their businesses and operations. So we know that Agenda 2030 is well underway. And I would tell you right now that that whole Agenda 2030 ideology, that is one of those heads of the hydras, but it's really a neutral head of the hydra that kind of sits back and is building an infrastructure, letting everybody else destroy themselves. Very similar to the Rothschilds or the bankers during World War II or pre-World War II, 1928, 1929, 1930, James Pierpont Morgan, all this. They crash the market. They take over all the smaller hometown banks. They take and all the collateralized assets of the farmland. They do one of the largest transitions of wealth in the history of humankind. This drives us into a Great Depression. And what they do is they set up a system to replace the old system. But it looks very similar to the old system. Well, right now, what we're seeing is a new system that is being built out while the old system is being systematically destroyed. And the question is who's going to have control of that old system? Well, the World Economic Forum is one of those kind of neutral players that is hoping that their system gets selected. I don't think it's going to, but we're seeing a lot of that come into play. Now, very, 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 very important. And Melissa Lawrence actually just hit on this. They took our gold and our land. They absolutely did. The gold was taken in 1933 under House Joint Resolution 129. And this was under the Emergency Banking Act because the Federal Reserve Charter that was passed in 1913 on December 24th only had a 20-year charter. The Federal Reserve Act only had a 20-year charter. It ended in 1933. No wonder why we had the Emergency Banking Act. What happened there is the Federal Reserve was not going to get renewed, and they called in all debts, which the United States didn't have the capital to cover those debts, went bankrupt, had to pay those debts in gold, and the Federal Reserve took over the banking system during that time. Gold is important here. Gold was up last week over to its all-time highs. if you want to invest in gold, if you want to get your 401ks, your IRAs invested in gold, we have Patriot Trading Group. You can find that at getgoldtoday.com. You can go ahead and give them a call. That number that's on the page, getgoldtoday.com. If you are working with them, if you have called them up and you're working with them over there, I need you to contact me. Hit me up and give me some feedback. Let me know how they're doing for you, because I want to know exactly how they're treating you, because that's what we do with all of our new sponsors and affiliates, is we want to know how they are treating you. So if you guys can let us know that, if you are working with them, please send that out to us. But if you want to visit them, talk to them, then give me feedback, getgoldtoday.com. From Wall Street Silver today, well, no one was paying attention. The Reserve Bank of India moved over 100 tons of its gold reserves from the UK to India for the first time since 1991. India will now hold most of its gold in its own vaults. The Reserve Bank of India also purchased 24 tons of gold in just 4 months, which is 1.5 times more than its gold purchases of all of 2023. China, Russia, and India are 3 of the world's strongest economies, all BRICS members, are rapidly stockpiling gold to increase control over their assets. The rapid pace at which they are accumulating gold is suspicious, almost as if they're preparing for a crisis. Now, I'm going to give you a few different parts here. Number one, China, Russia, India are all BRICS members. BRICS has been talking, or actually in the process of building a blockchain-based SWIFT network, a global currency that will integrate through interoperability backed upon gold. This is an indication that that's exactly what they're going to do. And when they do that, you will see gold skyrocket 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, as well as various cryptocurrencies that they integrate into that platform. Number 2 part, India is not the only country that pulled its gold out of the UK. Okay. Multiple other countries over the last 2 years have pulled their gold out of the reserves in the UK back to their home countries, Spain being one of them. The last time that Japan actually being one of them, the last time that we saw that massive amount of gold being pulled back to their home countries was right before the breakout of World War II. Heed those warnings, but have some gold. Unrealized losses on investment securities for banks jumped to $517 billion in Q1 of 2024. This is massive. This is $39 billion higher than the $478 billion recorded in Q4 of 2023. The surge was driven by higher residential mortgage-backed security losses held by banks due to rising mortgage rates. Q1 2024 also marked the 10th consecutive quarter of unrealized losses, an even longer streak than during the 2008 financial crisis. As higher for longer returns, unrealized losses are likely to continue rising. Did the banking crisis ever really end? No, it didn't. $517 billion in Q1 2024 of unrealized losses. And this is in the residential mortgage-backed securities. We are headed towards a residential and commercial real estate collapse, very similar to what happened in 2007, 2008. Banks are going to go under, but that's by design from this organization. They want to centralize banking power. They want to centralize banking power because when you centralize banking power, it's easier to influence the masses of the people into one platform and to transition into a new global reserve currency that is blockchain based as well as programmable and controllable. Just keep that in mind because that's what's really happening behind the scenes. And this is why they're propping up the stock markets of the world and making you think you're rich and you're wealthy, your 401ks are going up, Dow hit 30,000. Oh my God, everything's great. When behind the scenes, everything's falling apart and melting and collapsing. It's a facade. It's bullshit. Be careful where you put your money. That's my big suggestion right there. This is absolutely insane. Roaring Kitty, if you don't remember Roaring Kitty, GameStop and AMC just a few years ago, he's the one that helped drive that price up by sinking all of the short calls on those stocks. Currently owns 5 million shares of GameStop, of GME. He also owns $120,000 call options, which are currently in the money. This means that if he holds these options until they expire, he will own 17 million shares on June 21st. To put this in perspective, the total public float of GameStop is 268 million shares. So if Roaring Kitty holds his options until expiration, he'll own 6.3% of all outstanding GameStop's public float. You can't make this up. Well, what's also interesting about that is various trading platforms are trying to shut him down, including E-Trade. They're saying that he's manipulating the market, which he's not. He's simply just putting his trades online for everybody to see, which is what a lot of various different people do, including a lot of the hedge funds and the bigger corporations, because it's all kind of public information. But they're trying to remove his account and take his money and cancel his trades. And this is atrocious in the sense of what's happening to these various social media influencers that are simply trying to save companies and help draw investment into these companies. No coincidences. We talked about this over the last month and a half. We saw a chicken farm in Texas, a chicken farm in Ohio, and now we had a chicken farm in Illinois and one in Ohio or Iowa just the other day. All started on fire. 5-alarm fire at the largest free-range egg factory in the United States of America. There's this Farina Farms poultry farm in Illinois, burned down to the ground, millions of chickens dead. Not only that, is we have the culling of chickens all throughout the country because of avian flu. What is going on, guys? Well, they are utilizing various different parts of social and cultural, the destruction of our supply chain. I've talked about this. Over 250 plus food processing, manufacturing, and distribution facilities have burned down in the last 4 years. We've talked about this extensively on this show. That is either highly coincidental or there is something going on. Now, none of those fires, by the way, were looked at or viewed at as arson. I looked at them as small, minute cyber crimes because you can go in there, you can hack these machines that run overnight, and you can start taking them down. It was only over the last year and a half that we began to see poultry farms begin to burn down. And so this is an attack directly on our food chain. And next is going to come our infrastructure. And that's going to come when the food chain is depleted to a large extent. That is when they're going to focus on the infrastructure. And I think that they'll utilize the massive amount of terrorists in the United States of America to begin taking away at the U.S. infrastructure. But heed the warnings. If you have the room, you have the ability, get some chickens. You'll have eggs for life. Get some freaking chickens. And make sure that you're getting chickens that don't have any of their updated SHOTSs, right? NIH scientists made $710 million in royalties from drug makers, a fact they tried to hide. New data from the National Institutes of Health reveal the agency and its scientists collected $710 million in royalties during the pandemic. From late 2021 through 2023, these payments made by private companies like pharmaceutical companies to license medical innovations from government scientists. Incentive? You tell me they're going to be incentivized? Fauci was informed that a certain drug, HCQ, was being effectively used to treat COVID-19 in China on March 16th, 2020, yet he continued to publicly criticize the drug, according to the released emails. This email right here, subpoenaed by the United States Congress, official NIH email from Dr. Anthony Fauci, in collaboration with various other scientists around the world, is being shown that that specific drug was being utilized to successfully treat COVID during the pandemic. So I came out and said, so his intentional negligence caused the death of millions. When do the tribunals start? That's a good question. It's been proven that when you make it difficult for people in their lives, they lose their ideological bullshit and they get vaccinated. That was from an email from Dr. Anthony Fauci. And he comes out and claims that that's not what he was referring to. Let's listen to Congressman McCormick talk to Anthony Fauci about this. Or sorry, Dr. McCormick.
You said in an interview that you gave as part of an audiobook written by Michael Spector that you believed an institutional should make it hard for people to live their lives so they'd feel pressured to get vaccinated. Could we run the audio clip on that, please?
You think can be done about it? I have to say that I don't see a big solution other than some sort of mandatory vaccination. I know federal officials don't like to use that term.
Once people feel empowered and protected legally, you are going to have schools, universities, and colleges are going to say, you want to come to this college, buddy? You're going to get vaccinated. Lady, you're going to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Big corporations like Amazon and Facebook and all of those others are going to say, you want to work for us, you get vaccinated. And it's been proven that when you make it difficult for people in their lives, they lose their ideological bullshit and they get vaccinated.
Thank you. Are all objections to COVID vaccinations ideological bullshit, Dr. Fauci?
No, they're not, and
Thank
that's
you.
not what I was referring to.
Well, in reference to making it hard for people to get education, traveling, working, I'd say it very much was in context. And I take great offense to this. Miss Allison Williams testified before this committee about losing her job because she sought an exemption for ESPN's vaccine mandate, which came from recommendation from bureaucrats like yourself. She and her husband were actively working with a fertility expert, a physician, on how to get pregnant, and agreed with the premise that she was young, healthy, wanted to get pregnant, and shouldn't get the vaccination for medical purposes. But she was fired because you made it hard, just like you said in your statement, because you didn't want to make sure that the ideological bullshit got in the way of her working, of living her life, of making a medical decision with her healthcare professional. I think America should take great offense to this. That's exactly what you meant when you said making it hard for people to live without getting a vaccination. You affected people's ability to work.
That he did. And they did it for what? Let me see. $615 or $710 million in royalties from the drug makers. I mean, you look at those two statistics right there, and it makes a lot of sense. A warning: United Flight 998 from Brussels to New York Newark Airport was diverted to Dublin, Ireland this afternoon due to reports of two separate incidences. Passengers were removed from the flight after it was forced to land due to a case of suspected infectious diseases. One involved in the suspected medical incident, while the other was a disrupted passenger on board the flight. Probably wanted to get off because of it. Numerous police cars and at least one ambulance were pictured on the tarmac with the airplane. In the post, Johan Westberg said the question is now what virus is on board, if anything. Nothing has been released in the sense of the infectious disease, but that's how they've been doing it, guys. That's how these things spread throughout the world. And all it takes is one. All it takes is one. Italy. This is quite interesting. Italian Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini. This man is dangerous because he talks about the Third World War. Whoever can should stop him. And this was reported today all over Twitter. This is Matteo Salvini. I'm not going to play it because it's in Italian and many people don't read the subscripts. But basically what you get here is the understanding that they're talking about Zelensky. They're talking about how someone needs to stop NATO from instigating and starting World War III, because that is exactly what NATO is doing. We know that France has deployed specifically troops to Ukraine. We know that the United States and the UK have troops on the ground in Ukraine that are operating various different missile and weapon systems. We know that US P-8s are utilizing their resources over the Black Sea for target acquisition and telemetry acquisition for various fire control solutions utilized in Ukraine, which Ukraine doesn't have the operational capacity to US missile systems, but yet those US missiles are still sinking Russian ships. Putin came out and said the United States will face fatal consequences if Ukraine attacks Russian territory with US weapons. This is not good because this is going to happen in the next probably 4 weeks, less than 4 weeks. Ukraine is going to attack inside Russia with U.S. weapons. It's going to happen. You remember Joe Biden last week said, oh, no, we're going to give Ukraine the ability to defend themselves with U.S. weapons. Well, what's going to happen is they're going to defend themselves. They're going to hit deep within Russia. They're going to hit something that Russia's not going to like, and World War III is most likely going to escalate from that point. There's a lot of things happening here. I heard one interesting theory about this, by the way. You remember when we talked about the NATO bunker in Ukraine that was destroyed with Russian supersonic missiles, the bunker busters, and that over 300 people died, including NATO generals? Apparently, from what we're hearing about that, have you noticed that there's been a problem with the Secretary of Defense, Austin? It doesn't seem to remember that picture in the hospital wasn't him. Remember him disappearing in December and January, going to the hospital. You can't just go to the hospital when you're the Secretary of Defense and not be noticed. It doesn't work like that. And I brought about massive skepticism of the official story. I heard one theory this weekend that he potentially died in that incident. And I think that might actually be true. I don't know. I haven't seen any confirmed videos of him. I haven't seen much of him. And I'm not that type of person to go that route. But the legitimacy of the information that I heard was actually highly accurate. And it starts to make sense because I think a lot of what we're seeing with Washington, D.C., with the global political infrastructure, is a facade. It's all bullshit. What we're being fed is absolute garbage and bullshit. These people, if we even want to call them that, are not people. This last weekend, Houthis attacked a U.S. aircraft carrier again. Yemen's Houthi rebels have launched a second attack in 24 hours against U.S. carrier Dwight Eisenhower in the Red Sea using missiles and drones, as per the Houthi spokesperson, Hayana Saudia. The Middle East, Eastern Europe, and Taiwan. Notice the Taiwan stuff is building up again. China and Taiwan. If you go back a few years ago, and I was talking about the firestorm, and I talked about the top part, global economic collapse and World War III, and I said World War III will begin to break out when you start to see the destabilization in Eastern Europe, in the Middle East, and Taiwan, all occurring in and around the same time, where the United States, either through proxy or through direct kinetic interaction, is fighting all three of these wars at the same time and is completely dispersed around the world and depleted of their resources. That's when World War III will break out, because that is an automatic lose for the United States and Western allies. That's where we're headed right now. That's why we're seeing these proxies occurring all over the place. Now, this is something interesting. Do you remember Ebrahim Raisi, the president of Iran, who died in a helicopter crash last week? Why the hell is nobody talking about this? Well, how is it that the president of Iran goes down in a helicopter crash, and Iran, for the first time since Khamenei has taken over, doesn't stand up and say, Israel did it, the United States did it? They say, oh, we need to investigate this, see what happened. And we've heard nothing, crickets. Well, I said something. I said that this was an inside job, that Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, who has the full kind of authority, and then Raisi, who is kind of second in command, but is more of the proxy for the bureaucratic aspect of things. He's more of the head man. That Khamenei took him out. The reason he took him out is because we know over the last 8 years, there has been a component within Iran that has kept back channels open to the United States of America. We saw this after the killing of Soleimani, that there was back channels open between the Swiss embassy and Iran to the United States of America. And Iran said, hey, we have to save face. Let us launch some missiles into Iraq. We'll hit the ground. We'll miss the targets, but we still need to launch them. It was allowed to happen. This was confirmed just a few months ago from Donald Trump himself. Then we hear, and I was one of the first people to report this on X as well as this show, after the whole Israel-Iran conflict, that Iran contacted the United States of America and Israel 24 hours prior to launching their retaliatory strike on Israel. And they said, these are the targets that we're going to hit. Get your civilians out of there. We're going to minimize all civilian casualties. We're not going to destroy anything important. And that's what they did. And I came out last week after Raisi was killed. And I said, Khomeini is pissed off about this because the contact to the West was Iran's president. And he was going around the supreme leader in order to do that. And that Khomeini most likely wanted a larger retaliation against Israel. He wanted the destruction of Israel. Well, what do we see this week? Iran's supreme leader says Israel is headed for destruction. We are in the time of the destruction of the Zionists. Isn't it interesting? He's coming out with that level of strong rhetoric right now. Why? Because the Iranian president, the one person that was probably standing in his way to garner all the support of the actual forces without a coup, is now dead. And I said that Khomeini, I got it on my Twitter. I said, watch out the next few months. Iran is going to attack Israel. It's going to happen because they already have nukes. It's most likely nuke derived, by the way, of what we're seeing here. And then what do you see? Israelis' army stretched as fighting rages on in multiple fronts. I've talked about the stretching of multiple fronts of various different militaries. On the same scorching, Israeli troops fought street battles with Hamas militants in Gaza. The fighter jets structure Hezbollah targets, blah, blah, blah. They have no resources. The United States is bankrupt. The United States being bankrupt is the main reason that Israel can, or the United States funding them is one of the main reasons that Israel can still sustain this, because they're getting all their weapons and munitions and reloads from the United States and funding it through the United States. Which means that if Israel has their back against a wall and they need one option left, they will take it. And let's hope they don't do that. And we know that Iran has nukes. We know that shit is about to hit the proverbial fan, and this can go in multiple different directions. What directions are it going to go in? I think that we're going to have the drip flood over in the next few months. I think during that time, we're going to see the summer of love begin to rise up, chaos begin to ensue. I think that we're going to move into the fall. I think August is going to be an incredibly hot month. I think that a lot of information is going to drop during that time. I think that we're going to have kinetic warfare between the West, NATO nations, and Russia in the next 6 months, primarily due to the actions of Ukraine and the Biden administration and UK. I think that Russia is going to retaliate against NATO. I think China is going to move into Taiwan probably around the August-September timeframe. I think Iran and Israel are going to start kicking it off with kinetic warfare. I don't think it's going to be nuclear at first. And I think we're going to start heading towards banking collapse and global economic collapse in and around the same time. Why? Because that's the ammunition that these people expend in order to bring about the Great Reset. The Great Reset needs to happen in order for the New World Order, whether it's the Western New World Order, the BRICS New World Order, or something completely different, to actually come about. We are going to see that in our lifetimes, and it's happening right now in front of our faces. So my suggestion to you, prep people, get out there, make sure that you have a way to feed yourself, you have a way to defend yourself, you have a way to hydrate yourself, and you have a way to keep yourself healthy. And those are the types of sponsors that we bring about on this show. So we got Pet Club 247, where you can get your immune modulating mushrooms, redpills.tv/mushroom. Okay. One of the primary sponsors. You'll see the people in the chat talking about it. That stuff is phenomenal. We got My Patriot Supply, where you can get 25-year plus shelf life food that you can store anywhere in your house in a dry place, last forever, and it's going to feed you and your family. Make sure that you have 3, 6, 12, 18 months worth of food for each one of the members of your family. If you go to our Substack, redpillproject.substack.com, on there, you're going to see an article for 333 prepping. And this was done by Jason Garcia. It's a great prepping methodology, 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, how to prep in those contexts and how to build that up at home slowly over time. If you can't afford all that stuff, dude, start buying 1, 2, 3 cans of non-perishables each week, $1, $2, $3 worth of non-perishables. Start putting them under your couches and your closets. Get some food stocked away. Have a way to purify water. Primarily, have a way to defend yourself. 12-gauge shotgun is great. 8 in the tube, great way of home defense, of personal defense. To defend those that you love. We don't have any sponsors on that side, but hey, if you want to keep up to date with everything we're doing, redpills.tv, redpills.tv is our primary website, as well as you can go to the social redpill.com. It's a way to support us, but it's also a social network where you can collaborate with other people just like you doing the same thing and talking about the same things, socialredpill.com. Guys, that's all the time I have for you tonight. We'll be back with you tomorrow at the normal, regular time. Much love, respect, God bless. Take care. Have a great night. See you guys tomorrow.
spoon. That's impossible. Only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.